Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Yellow Couch. And I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Heather Francis, and this is my daughter, Gabrielle Curvin. And today we're going to give you part one of understanding and debunking stereotypes surrounding mental illness. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at dissociative identity disorder. And my daughter Gabrielle is going to define it and she's going to describe it. And then in part two, she's going to talk about some of the common misconceptions and questions that surround this disorder. I believe this is really relevant right now, even with what's going on with the pandemic. People who suffer from mental illness, they could be a little bit worse. So I think that this is really going to be a very educational program. Understand that my daughter Gabrielle is not a professional. She does not claim to be an expert in the field of psychology. All of the information that she's going to be giving you in these programs come from what she's been taught as a psychology major in university. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Gabby takes over talking about dissociative identity disorder. Take it away, Gabby.
Okay, so dissociative identity disorder. What is a dissociative disorder? So first we're going to talk about what that means. And there are multiple dissociative disorders, but they all fall under the same category of a group of disorders, including dissociative amnesia, dissociative identity disorder, and depersonalization/derealization disorder, all of which involve some sort of dissociation or separation of a part of the person's consciousness, memory, or identity. Now, specifically, dissociative identity disorder, or DID, is a condition in which two or more relatively independent personality states appear to exist in one person.
Wow.
Yes. So, according to the DSM-5, those with...
Now, what's the DSM-5?
The DSM-5 is what you use to properly categorize and define disorders.
Okay.
It keeps you up to date.
Okay.
I don't have the proper definition of it, but that's the general gist of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the DSM-5, those with DID have a disrupted sense of self and show alterations in behaviors, attitudes, and emotions when these alternate personality states occur.
So the alternate personalities, they're known as, those are alters, right? When
those are alters.
Okay.
So a term that is most, I guess, easy for people to understand and is widely used is multiple personality disorder. So this disorder used to be called multiple personality disorder, but according to the DSM-5, now it is called dissociative identity disorder.
But why would they change it?
Because it's more, they think, I'm not a professional, but it's more like, it's not multiple personalities, it's multiple personality states, which is different than having multiple personalities. A way that one person...
So it brings more clarity to it.
Right, essentially. Instead of saying you have multiple personalities, it's like, no, I have a broken up identity, kind of.
Okay.
A way that somebody described it to me, I was watching a YouTube video of this girl, her name is Dissociated on YouTube. And she described it as like if a piece of glass fell on the floor, that's, you know, like those would be the different alters.
But it's still
one mirror.
Wow.
Or
okay.
one piece of glass.
That's a great analogy.
Right. So some of the common symptoms with this disorder in particular are memory loss or amnesia of certain time periods, events, people, and personal information. So this can be lapse of time. I know for some people this could be a good example. If you've ever seen the movie Frankie and Alice.
That was a very good movie. Halle Berry.
Yeah, Halle Berry.
Really good movie. And it's a true story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she had two personalities, or three. I can't remember. I think
she had a few.
It was a few. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember it off rip, but
she would lose time.
Right. I think she was a dancer at night, and she like wouldn't remember her days at all. But she would be out and about, but her different alter would be fronting, so then she would have, lost time.
Yeah, and one of her personalities was a Caucasian woman, which that blew me away because she's an African American woman, but one of her alters was a Caucasian. And when she looked in the mirror, I loved how they depicted it in the movie, because when she looked at herself, she saw an actual Caucasian woman, even though she was an African American. So this is a real thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's very real to that person, and that's why it should be taken very serious.
Yes. So another common symptom is a sense of being detached from yourself and your emotions, which I didn't know was actually a common symptom of dissociating, but it seems as though throughout all of the dissociative disorders, that is a common theme of feeling detached, which is that sense of dissociating, because to dissociate means to sort of separate from yourself. Some people even feel like they're watching their body, like they're not even in their body, which is very interesting. So now we can talk about these alters, which
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Is it that the person is protecting themselves? Because I kind of looked at some videos to prepare myself for talking about this, and I realized with looking at people who had alters, almost every single one of them had one of the personalities was there to protect the person, and I found that really interesting. And
we're gonna get there. That's just what I was getting into.
Okay.
So alters have roles. So in many cases, the role of the alternate personalities, is to protect the emotional well-being of the main personality from stress or trauma.
So is it your mind protecting you? Is it a way that your mind is almost compartmentalizing and protecting you from,
in a way,
whatever trauma happened to you?
In a way, I think that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The process of dissociation and switching to an alternate personality state usually occurs during highly stressful situations.
Wow. So it is a protection.
Right. So some people develop alters when they're very small and they go through abuse. There are case studies that sometimes it happens after you're in an abusive relationship, or, something traumatic happens to you, and that your brain kind of protects yourself and builds this alternate personality to deal with the thing that you can't deal with.
Wow. That's your mind is powerful.
Very. Yeah. So the alters often make their appearance to help deal with difficult situations faced by the primary personality. And for an example, I have a case study, this is not a case study, but it's just an example used in my textbook, and I'm going to give it to you guys. So it says, for example, Kristen, a 19-year-old, reported being overwhelmed with stress during interactions or confrontations with her peers or parents. Her primary personality was compliant, depressed, and helpless, even to the point of depending on her mother's advice as to what to wear. Zach was the alter who displayed anger and aggression. She spoke with a clear, forceful voice, defined herself as a lesbian, and served as Kristen's protector.
Wow.
During childhood, when Kristen was bullied by other children, Zach would appear to make them stop. Zach was initially concerned about therapy, worried that she would be killed off once Kristen was no longer needed her.
Wow.
But later became a willing part of Kristen's fully integrated personality.
So is that the goal of therapy for someone who has dissociative identity disorder, is an integration?
I believe so. I believe the goal for having any mental illness and going to therapy is just being able to function in your day-to-day life, because that can be so hard for so many people that struggle with these abnormal disorders and have trouble just living their day-to-day life. Is just some sense of normalcy. So if integration is what helps them live a normal life, then I'm sure that is what they will try to do. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Okay.
So there is a lot of controversy surrounding diagnosis, which I didn't know. But DID is both complex and intriguing. And it's still a rare diagnosis. You don't see many people diagnose it, like many doctors diagnosing it. It's more like self-diagnosed. because
But why is that?
some clinicians contend that DID is relatively common, but that it is often not recognized and diagnosed, okay? And other practitioners, however, believe that DID is rare, that the increase in numbers may be due to clinician bias, the use of faulty assessment, or the use of therapeutic techniques that increase the likelihood of DID diagnosis.
Well, we saw that in Frankie and Alice, because the doctor who was treating her, the facility where she was, they thought that maybe he was incorrect, when in essence he was correct. And throughout their process of therapy, it actually came out, the trauma that happened to her and the different multiples or different alters that were coming out and why. And so she herself didn't understand why they came out, but eventually with time, they came to a conclusion as to a correct diagnosis. But I can see why that would exist clinically. I can see why, but I think it's a disservice to people when they don't get a correct diagnosis, because they need help.
I agree, but then there's also the other side of the coin that there's no way to test for this disorder. That's the issue.
Wow.
There's no way to really test to see if you have it or if you don't. Some clinicians have some assessments, but there's no like yes or no. It's you kind of have to just, do you have it? I don't know. Yes. That's why there's controversy surrounding diagnosis, because...
But people are suffering from it.
Yes, people do suffer from it. But that's why I think things like this program, and also people opening up on social media and YouTube about having the disorder and being showing their alters, being open enough to describe it and to bring awareness to it is really important, because if you are someone that feels you have this disorder and you're just suffering in silence and you don't know what's wrong with you and you can't really describe it, having someone who you feel like you can relate to that's on social media, you can go to your doctor and be like, listen, I saw this video, this is exactly how I'm feeling,
right?
Help me, you know?
Right. So on that note, before we even continue, if you think you're suffering from it and you need help, reach out to us and we will at least try and point you in the right direction. As I said, she's not a professional, but this is something that people are struggling with and they don't know who to trust. They have nowhere to turn. And we will definitely be able to point you in the right direction. Just, message me and we'll get you the help that you need, because you should not have to suffer, as Gabby said, you should not have to suffer in silence. Right. And the stigma that involves mental illness, it's unfortunate, considering that it does exist and it's a real thing.
Right.
And, there should be resources for everyone. So we want to be there for you. So tell us more about it.
So more on the diagnosis controversy. The temporary dissociation symptoms such as alterations in memory, thoughts, and perception, or a sense of depersonalization or feeling detached or numb, as we talked about before, are fairly common symptoms during periods of stress. Okay?
So stress kind of triggers it.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is, like, sometimes symptoms that are also of dissociative identity disorder can be mistaken for simply stress.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because it says that temporary dissociation symptoms such as alterations in memory, thoughts, and perceptions, or a sense of depersonalization are fairly common symptoms during periods of stress, which is another reason why it's so hard to diagnose DID.
Makes sense.
So some clinicians may mistakenly interpret these symptoms as evidence of DID.
Okay.
And then they misdiagnose, right? So because diagnosis depends heavily on self-report, feigning or faking is always a possibility, which is another reason why it's so hard for clinicians to diagnose this disorder. Differentiating between genuine cases of dissociative.
That's kind of sad that someone would fake having mental illness. That's really sad.
They may not be faking, but maybe it's misdiagnosis, like I said before. Maybe they have all the symptoms, but they don't have dissociative identity disorder. If someone is faking, that's a whole different situation.
I would hope not.
That's like, you need to search yourself.
Yeah.
So,
because there are people with real problems that need real help. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. And we can actually talk about some statistics as far as age and gender.
Oh, so is there a variance?
So the percentage of DID cases who are male is much lower than the percentage of reported child abuse histories for males and females.
So it's less?
So it's less for men.
And more for women.
And more generally.
Generally. Okay.
Which is interesting, I thought, because it's
not really, because women are abused. I think women are abused more.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. The numbers make sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Wow, that's actually sad. Women, we've got to stick together.
And if you feel like you are not being heard by your doctor, because I know this is a common problem, women go to the doctor, they cry wolf and people don't believe them, or whatever the case may be, don't give up. Like, keep trying, keep pushing, keep fighting for yourself, because eventually someone is going to listen to you and they're going to help you.
Yeah.
I know that's a problem that some women have, especially with mental illness. Like, they'll go to the doctor, say this and this and this is wrong, and they'll just say, oh, you're stressed. Oh, you're tired, or you're overworked, whatever. And they're not really listening to them. So make sure that you're heard.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So is that it?
So what we can do now is go over some case studies, some different examples.
That's interesting. Yeah. So we're going to hear about real people.
Yes.
Who've gone through this.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. It's good stuff.
Okay. So this first one is about little Judy.
Okay.
Little Judy is a young child who laughs and giggles. Gravely voice is a man who speaks with a raspy voice. The one who walks in darkness is blind and trips over furniture.
Wow. These are her alters?
Yes.
Wow.
Big Judy is articulate, competent, and funny. These are 4 of the 44 personalities that exist within Judy.
How many?
44.
Wow.
44 personalities that exist within Judy Castelli.
And this is a real person?
This is a case, yes.
Wow.
She was initially diagnosed with schizophrenia, misdiagnosis, but was later told that dissociative identity disorder was the appropriate diagnosis. She is a singer, a musician, an inventor, and an artist who has also become a lay expert on mental health issues.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is possible to live a normal life and still deal with these mental illnesses. It's possible.
I find it interesting how her struggle has turned out to be her profession, because that's basically what happened. Now you said she's a singer, musician, and inventor, and she's become a lay expert on mental health issues, and I hate to say this, but I think it's true that God doesn't waste any experience that you go through in your life. And everything that you go through, it's to help or assist someone else who's coming behind you. They're dealing with something, and because you found the courage to face it and to deal with it, and now you've gotten information, you can help someone else. So that's big.
I agree.
Wow.
Definitely, you don't go through something only for yourself. There's always another reason.
Yeah.
So another case study we can go through a few.
Really interesting stuff.
Okay.
Awesome information, by the way. Awesome.
Okay, so here is a former NFL star and Heisman Trophy winner, Herschel Walker. You may be familiar with him. He is a dissociative identity disorder carrier. He has dissociative identity disorder, and he has a book about his ongoing struggle with dissociative identity disorder and his efforts to integrate his 12 alters.
Wow.
In his recent book, Breaking Free: My Struggle with Dissociative Identity Disorder.
And he's African American.
He is African American, yes. He describes his alters as including the warrior, who appeared as he played football, and the hero, who had the role of making public appearances.
Wow.
Yes. So, like I said before, all of the alters, they have their purpose, and they show up in specific portions of their life. I feel like the protector, you usually see that person come up, or that alter come up when a child is little. Sometimes children are reported to have these alters. It's just that they're not really recognized until they get much older.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What I found really interesting in watching Frankie and Alice was that each alter dressed completely different, had in some cases, they had different accents. They spoke differently, completely different mannerisms. And I remember at the beginning, Gabby explained to us that they have different personalities. And it really is a completely different personality. So one alter may wear their hair one way, their clothes a certain way, and then another alter can show up and have a completely different look, completely different attire, you know, completely different accent, mannerism. And it's amazing that your brain has the capacity to manifest different personalities.
Yes, it is. Yep. So going back to what you just said, another thing in Frankie and Alice, something that I forgot to mention, is a common alter that some people with dissociative identity disorder have is a little. Now, littles are alters that are children. And in Frankie and Alice, she had a little alter. She was genius.
That's right.
And a lot of dissociative identity, people who have dissociative identity disorder, they have littles. And I'm not going to claim to know what the source of those littles are, but I think it's very interesting how some alters will claim to be 20 years old. They know their height, they know their weight, they know the color of their skin, they know everything about them, they know the way that their body is shaped, they know everything, and they know that they're in a host as well. They know that this body is the one that they're supposed to protect. They know when they're supposed to come out. A really, really good source for all this information I'm telling you is that girl on YouTube, Dissociated. Her videos are very interesting if you are, looking to get more information and just, dive a little bit deeper into exploring different alters and just understanding this disorder a little bit better, because, education won't kill you.
Right. It can only help.
Right.
What I loved about Genius in the movie, by the way, the movie Frankie and Alice, I believe it's on Netflix. Is it Netflix?
I don't know.
It's either Netflix or Amazon Prime. And so you have to watch it, because if you struggle with mental illness, it's a wonderful movie for you to know you're not alone. She ended up becoming really successful, and it was due to Genius, because that little was, the word says it all, genius. Genius was really smart. She went back to school. Once she recognized what was going on in herself, or in her brain, what was going on in her life, and, losing time and all of these things that were happening in her life. And she came to terms with it and integrated, I'm learning terminology from Gabby. She actually went back to school and she got her degree, and she became a teacher, I believe. Yeah. She became a teacher. And so, and she ended up marrying, I think, a professor of psychology. So, or a doctor, something like that. I don't remember. Watch it. Go watch the movie. It's really, really good. And, but I think it's a testament to the fact that even if you do suffer with mental illness, there's hope for you. You don't have to sit back and, feel insecure and say, oh, it's only me. I'm on my own. I'm by myself. I'm suffering in silence. No, listen. You can overcome this. You can learn to deal with it and function and become a productive member of society, go back to school, and have a life and have a future and believe that it can happen. Yeah.
So some final thoughts. I hope you learned a little bit about dissociative identity disorder. We are not done on the subject. We will be returning back to it for a part 2, dealing with misconceptions and questions, which there are a lot of misconceptions surrounding this disorder. So I hope you will join us for that next episode. And please, for this next episode, I hope that you'll watch Frankie and Alice, because it is one of the more accurate movies about dissociative identity disorder. Some of the other movies are not as accurate. So if you are looking for a movie that you think will help you understand this disorder a little bit better, that's a good one to watch.
Wow. Wow. This is awesome. Gabby, thank you. Thank you for your insight on the subject. And honestly, I'm looking forward to part 2. And honestly, for all of you out there, I pray that this program has been enlightening, and I pray it has been enjoyable. And thank you for watching part 1. Please like and share the video. You never know who can benefit from watching it. You never know who you can help. I am my brother's keeper. And so I'm going to leave the final word for Gabby.
Remember to have courage and be kind and stay positive.
Oh, I like that.